A crimson sky burned above the planet of Tarsus IV as Governor Revik's hands trembled over the comm panel. His voice was strained, barely holding back the panic that threatened to consume him. "They've sent one ship, just one." His eyes darted to the view outside, where the atmosphere shimmered under the weight of impending destruction. "You must understand we are lost if—" The transmission cut off in a burst of static, leaving only silence. Far away, deep within the heart of a war-torn galaxy, Captain Elias Kane leaned back in the command chair of the Vanguard, his gaze fixed on the holographic display before him. The image of Tarsus IV flickered, now nothing more than a doomed world under the grip of the brutal Zarvok Empire. "Status, Lieutenant Hayes," Kane ordered, his voice carrying the calm authority of a man who had seen too many battles. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, a young officer with sharp eyes and a steady hand, swiftly pulled up the data. "Governor Revik's last message, sir. Zarvok forces are heavily entrenched. Civilian casualties are significant." Kane's jaw tightened. "They're expecting a fleet," he said, his tone hardening. "They have no idea what's coming." The Vanguard was humanity's answer to a galaxy ruled by fear. Sleek, dark as the void itself, it housed technology that no other species had yet mastered. Kane knew that today, this single ship would make a statement that the days of humanity being overlooked and underestimated were over. As the ship hurtled through hyperspace, Kane's thoughts briefly wandered to Earth, to the blue skies and the green fields he had left behind. But this was no time for nostalgia. "Prepare for immediate combat readiness," he ordered, his voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge. "We're not here for a prolonged engagement. We're here to end it." Lieutenant Hayes nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls as the Vanguard-S systems powered up. The hum of the ship deepened, resonating through the hull as weapons came online and shields were charged to full capacity. The crew moved with practiced precision, their faces set with grim determination. "Entering the Tarsus system in 30 seconds, Captain," Hayes reported. The tension on the bridge was palpable, a coiled spring ready to snap. Kane's eyes narrowed as he watched the timer tick down. "This isn't just another mission," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "This is a declaration." The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of hyperspace, the vibrant colors of the Tarsus star painting the bridge in hues of orange and red. Before them lay the planet, scarred and burning, with Zarvok warships hovering like vultures over a dying carcass. Kane stood, his presence commanding as he surveyed the scene. "Open comms to the Zarvok flagship," he ordered. The screen flickered, revealing the reptilian visage of High Commander Nargle, the cruel architect of countless planetary subjugations. Nargle sneered, his yellow eyes glinting with contempt. "You think a single ship can challenge the might of the Zarvok Empire?" His voice was a guttural hiss, filled with arrogance. Kane's expression remained cold, unyielding. "No," he replied, his voice low and firm. "I think a single ship will destroy it." With a nod to Hayes, the Vanguard unleashed its first strike. The ship's primary weapon, a particle cannon of immense power, fired a beam of brilliant energy, slicing through the void with terrifying precision. The Zarvok fleet, taken by surprise, erupted into chaos as ships disintegrated under the onslaught. Nargle's sneer faltered, his confidence wavering as he realized the true threat before him. But it was too late. The Vanguard moved like a predator among prey, its weapons systems a symphony of destruction that left nothing but wreckage in its wake. As the last of the Zarvok ships fell silent, Kane returned to his chair, the weight of what he had just unleashed settling over him. He knew this was only the beginning, a single battle in a war that would span the stars. But today, humanity had made its mark. "Mission accomplished," Kane said, his voice steady. "Set course for the next target." The Vanguard turned, disappearing into the depths of space, leaving behind a shattered fleet and a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was here, and it would not be ignored. The Vanguard moved silently through the debris field, the remnants of the Zarvok fleet drifting lifelessly in the vacuum of space. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense, the crew processing the magnitude of their victory. Captain Elias Kane stood at the center, his gaze focused on the tactical display. "Damage report," Kane ordered, his voice calm despite the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes checked her console. "Shields at 80%. No hull breaches. Minor fluctuations in the power grid, but nothing critical. We're ready for the next engagement." Kane nodded, but his expression remained serious. "They'll be back. The Zarvok won't take this defeat lightly. We need to be ready." As if on cue, the ship's sensors blared to life, detecting multiple warp signatures at the edge of the system. Hayes quickly analyzed the data, her heart pounding as she realized the scale of the incoming force. "Captain, we've got a new fleet inbound," she reported, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "And it's bigger than the last one. High Commander Nargle is leading them personally." Kane's jaw tightened. He had expected reinforcements, but not this soon. "Prepare all weapons systems," he commanded. "We'll show them that humanity doesn't back down." The crew sprang into action, the hum of the ship's reactors growing louder as power was diverted to weapons and shields. Kane's mind raced, calculating their odds. The Zarvok were relentless, and this time they had brought their full might to bear. But the Vanguard had more than just firepower on its side, it had the element of surprise and the advantage of strategy. "Lieutenant Hayes, I need you to take control of the auxiliary systems. We're going to execute a full stealth maneuver," Kane said, his voice firm. Hayes nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls as she activated the Vanguard-esque cloaking systems. The ship shimmered and then vanished from the enemy's sensors, leaving nothing but the void in its wake. As the Zarvok fleet entered the system, their warships spread out, searching for any sign of the human vessel. High Commander Nargle's flagship, a behemoth of metal and firepower, took position at the center, its weapons charged and ready. Kane watched the tactical display, his eyes narrowing as he studied the enemy formation. He could feel the tension building on the bridge, each second stretching longer as the crew awaited his orders. "We'll strike at their heart," Kane decided. "Target Nargle's flagship. Take it out, and the rest will fall into chaos." The Vanguard moved with eerie precision, gliding through the enemy fleet like a shadow. As they closed in on the Zarvok flagship, the crew held their breath, the only sound the steady hum of the ship's systems. "On my mark," Kane said quietly, his eyes locked on the target. 3, 2, 1, fire. The Vanguard unleashed its fury, a concentrated beam of energy erupting from its main cannon. The blast struck the Zarvok flagship with pinpoint accuracy, tearing through its shields and ripping into its hull. Explosions cascaded across the massive ship, sending shockwaves through the surrounding vessels. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge as the crew watched the destruction unfold. Then, the comms crackled to life, and the sounds of panic and confusion echoed from the Zarvok fleet. "Captain, they're breaking formation," Hayes reported, her voice filled with exhilaration. "We've got them on the run." Kane allowed himself a brief, grim smile. "Good. Keep the pressure on. We don't stop until the job is done." As the Vanguard continued its assault, the Zarvok fleet began to crumble, their ships scattering in a desperate attempt to escape. But there was no escape from the human warship, not today. Kane's voice cut through the chaos with calm authority. "Focus fire on the remaining ships. No survivors." The Vanguard-esque weapons systems roared to life once more, and the bridge was filled with the sight and sound of destruction. But beneath the triumph, a darker realization settled in Kane's mind. This was just the beginning. The Zarvok Empire would not forget this day, and the war was far from over. As the last enemy ship was reduced to debris, Kane gave the order to stand down. The crew slowly relaxed, their faces showing a mix of relief and weariness. Kane remained silent, his thoughts already on the next battle, the next step in humanity's fight for survival. "Set course for the next target," he finally said, his voice steady. "We have a message to deliver." The Vanguard turned once more, disappearing into the stars, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed by the power of a single human ship. The Vanguard sliced through the dark expanse of space, leaving behind the smoldering wreckage of another defeated fleet. But there was no time for celebration. Captain Elias Kane knew the Zarvok Empire would retaliate with ferocity, and the longer they stayed on the offensive, the better their chances of survival. Yet something gnawed at him, a feeling that the Zarvok's next move wouldn't be as straightforward. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, her eyes sharp and focused, broke the silence on the bridge. "Captain, incoming transmission from High Command. Priority 1. Kane's brow furrowed as he nodded. "Patch it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Tarek, a seasoned strategist and one of the few people Kane trusted implicitly. The Admiral wasted no time on pleasantries. "Captain Kane, we've intercepted communications that suggest the Zarvok are planning an ambush. They're gathering forces near the Brelin Nebula, likely a trap designed to catch you off guard." Kane's mind raced, considering the possibilities. The Brelin Nebula was notorious for its unstable energy fields and dense gas clouds, a perfect hiding spot for an enemy fleet. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "Proceed with caution, Kane," Admiral Tarek said, his tone grave. "If you engage, do so on your terms. The last thing we need is to lose the Vanguard in a direct confrontation." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in a heavy silence. Kane stood, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. He turned to his crew, their eyes reflecting the same resolve he felt burning within. "Helm, set a course for the Brelin Nebula," Kane commanded, his voice steady. "We'll take the fight to them, but we'll do it smart. Engage stealth systems and prepare for silent running." The crew moved swiftly, executing Kane's orders with the precision born of countless battles. The ship's engines hummed softly as it altered course, the nebula looming ahead like a storm on the horizon. Inside the Vanguard, the atmosphere was thick with tension, every crew member acutely aware of the danger they were about to face. As they approached the nebula, Kane called Hayes over to the tactical station. "I need a full scan of the area. Look for anything out of place, energy signatures, anomalies, anything that might give away their position." Hayes nodded, her fingers flying across the controls. The holographic display filled with swirling clouds of gas and crackling bursts of energy. "I'm picking up faint readings, Captain. Could be cloaked ships or the nebula's natural interference. It's hard to tell." Kane's eyes narrowed as he studied the display. "They're out there, waiting for us to walk into their trap. But we're not going to play their game." He turned to the crew, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Deploy decoys. Make it look like we're entering the nebula directly. Meanwhile, we'll circle around and hit them from behind." The Vanguard launched a series of drones, each one mimicking the ship's energy signature. They drifted toward the nebula, drawing the attention of the hidden Zarvok fleet. Moments later, the enemy warships revealed themselves, their weapons trained on the decoys. "Now!" Kane ordered. The Vanguard surged forward, breaking from its concealed position and unleashing a devastating barrage on the unsuspecting Zarvok ships. Explosions lit up the nebula, the enemy caught completely off guard. But as the Vanguard pressed its advantage, a massive Zarvok dreadnought emerged from the swirling clouds, its cannons already charging. Kane's heart skipped a beat as he realized the trap was deeper than they had anticipated. "Evasive maneuvers!" he shouted. "All power to forward shields!" The Vanguard banked hard, narrowly avoiding the first volley of plasma fire. The dreadnought loomed closer, its weapons locking onto the human warship. The bridge shuddered under the impact of the enemy's assault, alarms blaring as damage reports flooded in. Kane gripped the edge of his console, his mind racing for a solution. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they weren't beaten. Not yet. "Target their main reactor," Kane ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We take out their power, and they're dead in the water." Hayes worked furiously at her station, her face set with determination. "Locked on, Captain? Firing!" The Vanguard's main cannon fired a concentrated beam of energy, striking the dreadnought squarely in its core. The enemy's ship shuddered violently, internal explosions tearing through its structure. As the dreadnought began to break apart, Kane allowed himself a brief sigh of relief. But before he could fully relax, Hayes spoke up, her voice tinged with worry. Captain, I'm detecting more warp signatures, multiple ships inbound. It's another wave. Kane's eyes darkened as he realized the Zarvok weren't done yet. The battle was far from over, and the stakes were higher than ever. Brace yourselves, Kane said, his voice resolute. This is just the beginning. As the next wave of enemy ships appeared on the horizon, the vanguard prepared to face them, the crew united in their determination to survive. They were humanity's last line of defense, and they would not go down without a fight. The vanguard quivered under the relentless barrage from the Zarvok fleet. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense, filled with the hum of overloaded systems and the smell of burning circuits. Captain Kane's eyes were locked on the tactical display, his mind racing against time as he calculated their next move. "Shields down to 20%, Captain!" Hayes called out, her voice taut with urgency. "We can't take much more of this." Kane clenched his fists, his gaze flickering to the vast swarm of enemy ships closing in. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. But surrender was not an option. Not when the fate of humanity hung in the balance. "Divert all power to weapons and engines," Kane ordered. "Prepare for a full frontal assault." The crew hesitated for a split second, the audacity of the order sinking in. But they had come to trust Kane's instincts, and this was no time for second-guessing. Energy was rerouted, and the ship's lights dimmed as every available resource was funneled into the final attack. Kane activated the ship-wide comms. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of the situation. "This is it, everyone. We're going to punch a hole through their lines and head straight for their command ship. If we take out their leader, the rest will fall apart. Stay focused, and give it everything you've got." The vanguard surged forward, engines roaring as it charged headlong into the enemy formation. The ship's cannons blazed, sending torrents of energy tearing through Zarvok vessels. Explosions erupted around them, the bridge shaking violently with each impact. "Captain, the enemy command ship is in range," Hayes reported, her fingers dancing over the controls. Kane narrowed his eyes at the massive Zarvok dreadnought that loomed ahead, dwarfing everything else on the battlefield. This was the heart of the Zarvok fleet, the nerve center of their entire operation. Destroying it would mean victory, or at least a fighting chance. "Fire everything we've got!" Kane shouted. The vanguard unleashed its full arsenal, a relentless storm of missiles and energy beams converging on the Zarvok command ship. The enemy vessel's shields flared under the assault, struggling to absorb the onslaught. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Zarvok dreadnought retaliated with a massive energy pulse. The blast slammed into the vanguard, sending it spiraling. Sparks flew, and consoles exploded as the ship struggled to regain control. Kane gripped his station, his vision swimming from the impact. Around him, the crew fought to stabilize the ship, their faces etched with determination despite the chaos. "Shields are gone, Captain!" Hayes shouted over the din. "Hull integrity is failing!" Kane's mind raced, searching for a way out. They were too close to back down now, but one more hit would tear the vanguard apart. He glanced at the tactical display, an idea forming in the back of his mind. "Hayes, prepare to overload the main reactor," Kane said, his voice steely. Hayes' eyes widened in shock. "Captain, that'll destroy the ship." "I know," Kane replied, his tone unyielding. "But it's the only way to take them down. We'll set it to detonate on impact, turn the vanguard into a missile." A heavy silence fell over the bridge as the crew absorbed the weight of the decision. There was no time for goodbyes, no room for hesitation. They all understood the stakes, and what needed to be done. With a final, resolute nod, Hayes began the sequence. "Reactor overload initiated. We're on a one-way trip now." Kane stared at the enemy command ship, his grip tightening on the controls. "Helm, ram us straight into their bridge. Let's give them something to remember." The vanguard roared forward, engines burning with the last of their power. The Zarvok dreadnought loomed larger and larger, filling the viewport until it was all they could see. The enemy ship fired, but the vanguard plowed through the barrage, unstoppable in its final mission. As the distance closed, Kane allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He thought of Earth, of the people they were fighting to protect, and of the legacy they would leave behind. He hoped it would be enough. The Vanguard slammed into the Zarvok command ship, the overloaded reactor detonating with a blinding flash of light. The explosion tore through the enemy vessel, ripping it apart from within. And as the light faded, so too did the last remnants of the Zarvok fleet, scattered and leaderless. In the cold silence of space, there was nothing left but debris, and the enduring legacy of the Vanguard's final stand.